All right. Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Carrie Dillon. I am the Managing Director of the International Textile Alliance. We are the producer of Interwoven, which is where we are today. So thank you for being here. Um, for those who don't know, the International Textile Alliance is a nonprofit business association. Our members are textile mills, leather tanneries, converters, jobbers, suppliers to the industry, and this show is created for them to show their product and sell to their buyers. We also have an educational foundation, which is focused on educating our members as well as bringing new talent into the industry. And then, as I mentioned, our other segment is the trade show that we do twice a year. So today I'm here with our member Lindsay Fibers and Tencel Fibers. Ashley Buckhalter, who is the business development manager for interiors with Tencel Fibers, is going to present for us today. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a nice crowd, not quite as nice as the crowd that we had this morning for Fashion Snopes, but that was a really informative presentation as well. So thanking Carrie, as always, for inviting us to give this presentation. Really looking for good questions at the end of this and engagement. I think it always makes a presentation better when people feel like there's a two-way dialogue. So I'm very open to that. If you have questions during my presentation, please raise your hand and we can stop and talk through anything. It gets a little technical because we did want to speak to specifically how Tencel fibers are really good for product design and upholstery weight and curtain weight developments. So there'll be some testing. I don't get too in the weeds. If you need any results that you want emailed to you afterwards, let me know and I'll give you those test results. On top of that, this presentation will be emailed out afterwards. And we are filming this so that you can actually have this recording. If you can't make it, those of you who are at home, you can watch this on the ITA website afterwards. We'll put it on our YouTube channel, which is Home Lens on YouTube. And we also have some samples that we can kind of look through afterwards of the different developments that we've made, as well as some filled components, which I think are pretty cool to provide an alternative for fill. So with that, I will get started. Again, my name is Ashley Buckhalter. I am the Business Development Manager for Tencel Fibers, specifically for upholstery and curtain in North America. All right, so agenda here, we're going to go through who is Lenzing. Lenzing is a corporation. We'll go into what is Tencel Fiber. Tencel is a brand. We'll talk about the sustainability aspects of how we produce our fiber. We'll talk about specifically the benefits for home, and then more specifically upholstery and curtains, and then we'll just do a light touch on branding so you guys have the basics. Okay. Lenzing fibers are produced from wood. I know in this market we often talk a lot about rayon, but this is Lenzing fibers produces all three types, and today we're going to talk a lot about TENCEL Lyocell. As you can see, our fiber is used for yarn, for fabric, for non-woven applications, and we even go into the netting that is used in grocery stores around your fruit. It's biodegradable and compostable. That's why it's really cool in the grocery store setting. So the Lenzing Group, we are large, we are global, we have over 7,000 employees. We have been expanding, but also innovating so that we meet our sustainability targets for basically the inception of our company, which is over 100 years old. We just opened a 100 kiloton lyocell plant in Thailand earlier this year. Also this year coming online is a 500 kiloton dissolving wood pulp plant in Brazil. So like I said, we're global. The dark circles here are where we produce TENCEL Lyocell, which is the form of rayon that we're going to be focusing on here today. We also make viscose and modal at some of these other sites. We produce TENCEL Lyocell in Mobile, 2 in Austria, where we're headquartered, 1 plant in the UK in Grimsby, and then in Thailand, which I just mentioned as well. The other offices that are like, kind of ovals that aren't filled in is where we have marketing and technical support. So what is Tencel Fiber? we are taking a look at the different ways that fibers come into being. And so you have your synthetic polymers, which usually come from fossil fuels, sometimes bio-based. You have your natural polymers, which are protein-based, so they come from animals. This is silk, this is wool. You have the anorganic substances, so fiberglass. And then the natural polymer that we make is cellulose-based. So some cellulose comes from cotton and flax, other cellulose comes from wood pulp. So that's what we're using. And we specifically make viscose, modal, lyocell. We don't make cupro, but it's in the same family type. So we have our lensing brands here. So lensing is really for industrial use. You might see that sometimes. VSL is for non-woven use. We do use our fibers in order to create baby wipes, face wipes. And then TENCEL Lyocell is really what we're focusing on here today. We make TENCEL Modal and TENCEL Lyocell. The brand is TENCEL, and the kind of, you can think of it as like the generic name, is Lyocell and Modal. Okay. So some key milestones, like I said, we're over 100-year-old company. We started to manufacture viscose in the 1930s. In order to overcome some challenges like weak when wet, and then pilling in the end result, we created Modal in 1965. At that point, we did not patent it, and it became so popular that it became to be used as a generic term. In 1992, we innovated even further to create a closed-loop process that did not need any harsh chemicals in order to make lyocell. So we invented lyocell, and we brand it as TENCEL Lyocell. We also brand TENCEL Modal, but we'll focus more on lyocell in this presentation. Okay, further on, what is TENCEL? Like I just said, you have viscose. Sometimes in this industry, I think we just talk about rayon, and normally what people are using is viscose. It's a fine choice to create a soft hand, but it does usually take a harsh chemical process in order to make this fiber type. So we innovated to create Modal. You still need a viscose process, but you can recapture a lot of that and make sure it isn't as dirty, but it will still require the chemicals. TENCEL Lyocell just uses an organic solvent. So where does the solvent part come in? So we take wood, it is then shipped, it is then turned into pulp. But instead of making paper, we are breaking it down into a honey-like mixture with a solvent, organic solvent, non-toxic, and we extrude it out the other side of spinnerets. It looks like spaghetti. Instead of keeping it in filament form, we are cutting it up to make a staple fiber. We sell a variation of D-Texas. So this is where, because you don't need the harsh chemicals, we can use less water, and we can also recapture all of the inputs that we need in order to make the fiber. Because of this recapturing of over 99%, we call this a closed loop process. And you'll hear, it's a very big buzz term in sustainability circles. I don't know how much the industry uses it in general, but I think you're gonna start hearing this more and more. And this morning when she was talking about seeing trends and what the consumer's looking for, they're looking for natural fibers. They're looking for being able to trace the fiber back, wanting to know more about, okay, where does this come from? And they're also looking for things that are non-toxic and non-harmful. So people often ask us, how much of the wood are you using? And the answer is 100%. So from the pulp that we were talking about, from the wood that is pulped, we use 40% of that to make our fiber types. We use 10% of that for biorefinery products. So any of the byproducts like vinegar or sugar that come from the process can be sold into the food industry. And then we use the other 50% to run our plants on bioenergy. All right, a little bit more on the sustainability. So it has to do with where you're getting your wood from, and it has to do with the chemistry you're using, and it has to do with supply chain transparency. So as we stated before, process is wood to fiber, but where are you getting the wood from? And some people are not doing their due diligence, and we at Lensing make sure that we are never sourcing from endangered or ancient forests, and everywhere that we do source from is either an FSC or a PEFC managed forest. And one of the ways that we stay on top of that is through our partnership with Canopy. It's not a partnership really, they are an organization that goes through and rates different cellulosic producers. I sometimes call us a cellulosic producer because that gets back to the wood base. And what's important about this slide is that they've ranked different manufacturers from red to dark green. Obviously, you want to try to steer away from anyone who's in the red category. We have the highest award you can get, which is a dark green shirt. And one of the reasons why we have that dark green shirt is because we are emitting less. We don't need as many chemicals in order to make anything. We're recapturing what we're using, and then we don't have to put a lot of wastewater into the waste stream, which is kind of at the beginning where you saw where Lensing was situated near the lake. You know, you can drink straight out of the river, straight out of the lake there because we have such high regulations for our wastewater treatment facilities. And so one of the ways that you can think about this input and output is through a life cycle assessment, sometimes just called LCAs. If you're in the biz, sustainability biz, people just say that. I like to spell it out because I think it makes you think about it. We're trying to think about the entire life cycle of our product, and our product is just fiber. It's not, it's not yarn, it's not anything else. We do our job to connect everybody, but we just make fiber. And so we're taking a look at our inputs and we're taking a look at our outputs and seeing where we can really make an impact. And another organization that helps us is called the Higg Index. So this is another third-party audit that we have that rates us and gives us an MSI score. So allowing this transparency and working with these other organizations to make sure we're doing our due diligence is how that everybody can tell we're really committed. So we're going to take a look at these different pillars. So you have chemistry, you have resource depletion, so what are you using in order to run your factories? You have outputs, which are your CO2 emissions, and then you have nutrient or water pollution, sometimes called eutrophication, but I rarely say that right. So, and then also water scarcity, because it does usually take a lot of water to manufacture most textiles. So breaking this down even further, chemistry score. So we have a chemistry score that is 30% lower than conventional cotton. That is because cotton takes a lot of pesticides and fertilizers in order to continue to keep the soil able to grow the cotton. We also have a better score than your generic rayon. This is a very dramatic slide, but water scarcity is indeed a threat to life. And like I just said, water is a big deal when it comes to the processing and manufacturing of textiles. So we know that there's 20% industrial water pollution coming out of our industry. We also know that we're using 1.5 trillion liters of water a year, which is a pretty major impact. And so our fiber can really make a difference here because we use 97% less water than cotton fiber, conventional cotton. And that's, again, because we don't rely on irrigation systems. The forests that we're getting the wood from are managed, and it's rainwater that's feeding them. So we don't have quite, the impact, and we're also able to reuse the water that we are using when we produce the lyocell. All right. So another good thing is our CO2 score is lower than a generic rayon, not lower than cotton. Cotton does really well here. A lot of people say also that cotton can sequester some carbon. I like to think that the trees that we're growing are also able to sequester carbon. But you'll see that we have a 58% lower global warming score than generic viscose, and that has to do a lot with the energy we're able to recapture at the plants. So one of the offerings that we have is True Carbon Zero Fiber. I know this whole talk today is about innovation, and one of the things that we've been thinking about is how lyocell is actually an innovation on rayon fiber, period. So it's the latest and greatest of rayons, so much so that it really doesn't even resemble in production process viscose at all, but also We have made innovations on lyocell itself, which is Refibra, we'll talk about later, and then True Carbon Zero. So as a company, we first do what we can internally to reduce our carbon emissions. So we've done that through, again, the bioenergy, cutting down on transportation, whatever we can to sourcing our wood locally, whatever we can to reduce it ourselves. We engage with partners who we also know are on the same sustainability journey. So we're trying to work with suppliers who are watching the chemicals that they use. They're also monitoring their CO2 output. And then the third thing is, if we can't do it internally or through our partnerships, we do have an offset program, one of which would be an example of is in Bangladesh. People are still having to use coal in order to make food. We are helping with the supply of natural gas, so they're getting off coal. I'm going kind of quickly. Are there any questions as of yet? All right, okay. All right, another challenge is, of course, the waste stream. We all know it's massive in our industry, so 73% of textiles end up in landfills. And the cool thing about our fiber is it is biodegradable and compostable. And we've actually gone through and had it certified by TUV Austria. This is a organizing body that really makes sure that within a certain amount of days, the fiber is completely biodegraded. And so it will biodegrade, and it is compostable in a variety of settings, marine, home compost, as well as industrial compost. So the good thing is you can say, you know, we're starting with a fiber that we know is not going to harm the planet if it, God forbid, does end up in a landfill. And so this is a really good, I think, slide that shows that. We did a study in California, actually through one of the universities, and you can see by day 14, this off the way, that it's a shred. This is a 100% TENCEL Lyocell shirt that we used, actually. And normally when we do the study, what's left is just the polyester sewing thread around the shirt. So, all right, and then supply chain transparency. Of course, there are a lot of generics out there. How do you know you're working with our branded product? So we do put a tracer in our fibers that if you are purchasing a product made with TENCEL Lyocell, or if you are weaving a product made with TENCEL Lyocell, you will send in a sample of your fabric, and we are able to trace that through and say to you, yes, indeed, you're working with our fibers. So you know you're actually getting what you're paying for. So the other innovation that I touched on before is about the waste stream as well. So instead of cotton garments going into the waste stream, what we're able to do is we're able to take 30% post-industrial mixed with post-consumer cotton textile waste. We do this in Europe. And we're able to pulp that back down to the cotton, and we blend it with the wood pulp. So it's cotton pulp and wood pulp that then goes through the lyocell process. Out the other side comes a virgin TENCEL Lyocell. So it doesn't degrade the fiber at all. It's like you're working with a fiber that's just as strong as an original TENCEL Lyocell fiber. So that is a circularity story. I know we talked, I mean, that also is a buzzword in the industries, of course. So people might say, do you have a circularity option? Well, if you work with TENCEL Refibra technology, yes, you do. And these are some of the things we kind of, these next 2 or 3 slides just hit the hi-hat on this. So we have different technologies. We have the Refibra, which I just covered. We have Micro, which is a thinner Detex, finer, so that you can work with it to create softer hands. We have our EcoSoft, which really speaks to elemental chlorine-free bleaching. So it's a white fiber. I mean, all of our fiber is white, but you know that we're not using any of the harsh bleaching chemicals. And then EcoColor is our dope dyed or spun dyed, some people call it, fiber, where the dye is actually put into the solvent before it's extruded. So when it comes out the other side, you don't have to worry about bleaching or crocking of color. And you also don't have to use any extra water to dye it. All right, so in sum, for sustainability, before we get into the product side, botanic origin, environmentally sound production, verifiable, and it reverts back to nature. We have a variety of detexes and lengths that we can offer you that I think really sets us apart for your constructions. We're pioneers. We really created Lyocell in 1992. We're actually celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. So stay tuned. We might have a party in Mobile, Alabama. All right, and then identifiable, and I touched on this in the beginning, but we do have technical service. So if you're having any challenges with your spinners or at the mill, we can help. Now, these icons represent some of the benefits of the fiber that are inherent to the fiber. Obviously, your construction of the fabric that you're weaving or selling is, very variable depending on what you're constructing. But the fiber itself is very soft. It's very strong. It does not promote bacterial growth, and it has good moisture management, which also relates to thermal regulation. When I was going through this morning, I realized I don't have slides on thermal regulation, but I'm going to speak to that when I talk about moisture management. All right, here we go. TENCEL benefits for upholstery. Okay, smooth, it's got a good drape, moisture management, unfavorable for bacterial growth, minimal static charge. So you want your upholstery fabric to be soft. I know that you might want it coarse, you might want it thick, you might want it slubby, you might want it boucle, but at the end of the day, if you're going to be sitting on it or sleeping on it, you want it to be soft to the touch. And our fibers can really help that, especially if you're working with other natural fibers like a linen or a cotton. And the reason that it's so soft is because of the structure of the fiber itself. As you can see, polyester, also very super uniform on the outside. Wool, you have that little scaly effect. Cotton has got a beautiful body, I'd like to say to it. TENCEL Lyocell, also a very smooth structure. But the difference really between the poly and the Lyocell we'll get into. And the way that we know it's super soft is we've done tests. It's called a fibrometer test. You lay a piece of fabric over a cylinder, it gets plunged through, and you're really measuring resistance. So if you think of a canvas on your hand, you're going to feel a little bit more friction, a little bit more resistance. If you think of 100% processed silk, you're going to think of something really soft. So for us, you could see that the more lyocell there is, the softer the hand, and that was what's found in the measurements. Obviously, if there's nothing in it, or if there's just a little bit of viscose, it's going to be a little bit rougher, which I know sometimes happens with upholstery because some people want to put a backing on it, which is going to make it stiffer. Okay, and the stiffness also, we can help with that with the drape. So we also measure the drape of our fabrics. It's called the drape coefficient test. I actually really like this test for some reason because I think it looks cool, but you lay a piece of fabric over a table and the sides will fall down naturally if there's drape. So if there's a lot of drape, the shadow underneath, the diameter is smaller. If there's not a lot of drape that's sticking out like this, like you're going to a sock hop, then you're gonna have a larger shadow underneath you. So we measured this. Again, this is a little inverse. The smaller the value here, the better the drape. So you're seeing all the way to the left, 30% lyocell is really helping with the natural drape of that fabric. Okay, moisture management. So before we saw the close-ups of the fiber types, so also our fiber is uniform on the outside. Polyester is uniform on the outside, but polyester is not able to absorb any of the moisture inside. It sits on the outside. Cotton can absorb, plenty, very good, but TENCEL Lyocell will actually take it into the inside of the fiber itself, and it will disperse it really quickly. So it really helps regulate the moisture around it and the water vapor in the air. This is just a slide that kind of shows you that obviously TENCEL Lyocell is uptaking more water vapor than the other fiber types. And why is that important? Because sometimes you take your shoes off and you put your bare feet on this couch, which I see this woman is doing right here, and you want to take a nap on your couch and you want to get comfortable in your house, but you don't wash your upholstery. It would be cool, you know, sometimes people have slip covers. I remember some, you know, family members of mine had the slip cover effect. It's pretty crunchy. I think they have made good innovations in slip covers, but if you don't have a slip cover, you're not washing really your upholstery fabric. And what happens is over time, things build up in the fabric, and TENCEL Lyocell doesn't allow the moisture to stay within the fabric. So there's no room for that. And what that means is we did some tests, and you can see over time, there's not the bacteria growth on the outside of our fibers. So obviously cotton and, you know, polyester, there is some bacteria growth here. Also dust mites. This is a dramatic picture of a dust mite, but I think it brings home the point that it's really starving bacteria, and it's really starving the dust mite. So it's not antibacterial. We don't use that term. That's a technical term, but we do say that it creates an environment unfavorable because it basically, there's no water for them to live on. Okay, and then this is about minimal static charge. So we've all had the experience of throughout the day, you're building up static charge when you walk on a carpet. If you're going past your couch a lot, you know, these things start to build up over the day. And so we did measure this. We put a piece of fabric on a table. We ran the rod over it several times to build up that charge. And then we had this machine test out what was remaining. And what we found is that it's not really building up in a lyocell fiber over time like it does in a polyester, which is pretty high. So this is something very important to the industry: abrasion test and pilling test. We really needed to make sure that the lyocell was going to be able to perform in this market, because I think a lot of people associate TENCEL with chambray, with intimate wear, and so we did our due diligence beforehand to make sure, okay, what are the kind of constructions and blends that we need here to make sure that this is going to work in industries where you're really rubbing the fabric over and over again with your body. So we did do abrasion tests with the Martindale machine. What you can see here is obviously the PET and the polyester are still outperforming us by a significant margin. We know that. So we often suggest blending, using them as a blending partner. I often suggest please use a recycled poly. But I can see, you know, you can see here that we are passing all of the tests for home use. Okay. Sample not destroyed. Also, we measured pilling. And pilling is those balls that you see on the outside of a fabric over time that form. And what you can see here is that the actually TENCEL Model Loft performed very well in order to not pill. Also, we're coming in strong with the lofts, and then at 30 and 60% with the lyocell. So these are the results after 5,000 cycles. Blending partners for upholstery fabric, we can really blend with anything. We can blend with natural fibers, we can blend with wool, we can blend with synthetic. And I think the story here is, you know, if you're blending with other natural fibers, that's just that much more of the fabric that's going to be able to biodegrade. Okay, now we're going to talk about curtains. So all of the attributes about the fiber I just mentioned, they also apply to curtains, but there's a few others here we're really going to touch on. Okay, so the softness we talked about, the drape we talked about. Here we'll focus more on the wrinkle recovery and then the sheen, because I know that that is important for, more important for curtains. Okay. So as we said before, the softness and the drape are obviously key in a curtain that looks really refreshing and makes you feel really comfortable in your home. And what you'll find is that the higher amount of TENCEL Lyocell in the construction, the softer the fabric is. So we did tests like within, so we're comparing, at 39%, at 50%. So depending on the different weights, you're gonna see here, this is the inverse. The lower the number, the more the softness. So 90% Tencel with polyester is a very soft, drapey fabric. All right, and again here, we are looking for this drape coefficient. Lower the number, the better the drape. So these are really just to let you guys know. I mean, anyone who's ever really worked very much with lyocell, you kind of know that it's drapey. You know that it feels super soft. Most of us have had a dress, and fellas, I think you might have had a lining in your blazers at some point, that really speak to the softness of this. So these tests are really just to back up what I think most people already know, but I can go into that more afterwards if you guys have any questions. All right, improved wrinkle recovery. Blending with 30% or more TENCEL Lyocell improves the wrinkle recovery rate of curtain fabrics. This, I think, is kind of interesting and key because I don't think people associate us with that. And I also know that a lot of natural curtain is using cotton or linen. And so I think this maybe could improve not only the hand, but the wrinkle recovery. So we did another fibrometer test, and we also did the durable press rating test. So the durable press rating test evaluates the smooth appearance of flat fabrics after repeated home laundering. So you may not wash your upholstery, but you often do wash the curtains because the dust that sits on the top of your curtains can be really nasty. So you can take those off and launder those. And what you'll see over time is that the wrinkle release is significant, actually. And there's a decrease in the appearance of wrinkles after washing. And this is, again, goes into that. So the larger the percentage, the better the wrinkle recovery. So we're coming in pretty strong here again with that 90% TENCEL Lyocell and polyester blend. Sheen, so this really speaks to sheen, color retention, and vibrancy. So fabrics with TENCEL Lyocell fibers retain long-lasting vibrancy, and that's because of what we talked about before, the nature of the fiber itself. It really dives deep into the cellular structure. And because it's smooth on the outside, like we talked about, it can often reflect light really well. So this is, again, really nice for even a velvet curtain. We did, I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but we have a cube that's outside when you walk in on the first floor, and we're showcasing a velvet that is 50% TENCEL Lyocell, 50% cotton in the pile, and we kind of pooled it on the bottom of the cube, just so that you guys could kind of see the sheen and that's really the drapiness of the fabric. So check that out if you haven't seen that yet. Okay, so we really talked through most of the presentation now. I'm just going to tell you about why you would want to brand with TENCEL and how to do that. So for it's 30% in the construction, whether that be upholstery or curtain weight. And we do that because we really want to be able to stand behind our brand name. People associate TENCEL Lyocell with sustainability. We know that from a study that we did internally with Nielsen, but they also associate our brand name with quality. So we really want to make sure that it's going to retain the benefits that we talked about. And we know that at 30% it will do that. So that is the requirement. And then also, it's really a service. It's free of charge. It's something that we offer because we want to help everybody else sell the fabrics that are made with TENCEL Lyocell. So as the business development team here in North America, Walter and I are really here to help you sell the end use products, because we just make the fiber. So if you need swing tickets, we call them swing tickets, or hang tags for your products, if you want to put this brand with TENCEL Lyocell on a package that you're selling. I know we don't really do that for upholstery so much, but even the retailers especially can use our brand so that it makes it out the door at the retail level. So that's really the benefit. And again, it's something we provide for free and we're happy to help people with. All right. So thank you for your time, and I would like to now mix and mingle, open it up for questions. I think I have to stay here at this podium for a little bit longer in case we have any questions coming in online, but also here to answer questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. We need 2 questions because we have 2 things.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
I was taking notes going back to the pig
Yes.
index rating.
Yes.
And what was the one, you said there were really 4 things: chemistry, resource depletion, output of CO2, and there was something before water scarcity that I missed.
It might have been eutrophication. Yeah, there you go.
Clean water.
Oh, so what was
Pollution of water.
So what's that word again? I'm sorry, I can't see.
Eutrophication. Yeah. So it means nutrient pollution in the water. And that really oftentimes is microfiber. And so we don't contribute to that because we biodegrade even in marine life. That's kind of something that sets us apart because we know it's been a lot of bad press around microfibers after home laundry. They're going into the waste stream because your washing machine can't capture them. And then it ends up in your fish, and then we eat the fish. And that's why you see all this messaging around, like, you have a credit card in your spleen. And I'm like, oh, terrific. Yeah, so that's really where we make an impact, is the biodegradability.
So that's what that
Eutrophication, yeah. Yes, please, Keith.
For upholstery fabrics, what about the flammability? What level?
So we have, we have the samples here. They're the chenilles, Walter. Chenilles, yeah. We did our test on 5 different chenilles, and they all passed the Cal 117, the latest iteration of that. I know that there are also standards out of Europe, and so we've tested for those as well. I have a testing booklet that shows you the flammability as well as shrinkage, and so I can send that to you so that you have the details. Yeah.
Is that treated or is that
as is untreated? You know, we make fiber for a global market, but the North American market really adds a lot of treatments. And we have, you know, strict regulations that we have to meet, and kudos to us. And we do make a fire retardant fiber, but that really goes into like the jackets of firemen. We don't really use that for this type of application. It's not really necessary. And in Europe, the market doesn't use a lot of those treatments. So some furniture makers are putting an underlay around the upholstery. You know, in Europe, I think, you know, they do or do not use a backing sometimes. I think there's different ways that people work with this. That's the long, short answer.
So with the build, because usually the build is too much, but like for matting or to use that building?
So here's what happened. The foam shortage in Texas. People were freaking out and they were calling us and they were like, do you have an alternative for foam? And no, we don't. We don't make foam. But what we can do is we can take our fibers, like 6.7 D-Tex, we can blow them 50% TENCEL Lyocell, 50% recycled poly, and we can create something that can go around the foam that is a garnet wadding that's essentially sustainable. It gets rid of some fossil fuel use, and it creates a lot of softness in between the foam and the upholstery. It depends on what kind of seat you want. I mean, different furniture makers, they have different aesthetics and different like feels. So we do that with the batting, and then we also made a needle punch to go around the frame, because you know, I don't know, Dacron and Rebond, Dacron is 100% polyester, and they use that a lot in order to get the upholstery to stay tight and not change over time. So we thought, okay, why can't we play around with that? So we did a blend, 50% lyocell, 50% recycled poly. We created this needle punch that is really kind of cool to feel. I think we should pass those out because they're kind of softer than you would imagine, but it has the thickness, yeah.
And does it have the compression at the time?
So we have been working with the manufacturers. We don't make that. Again, we just make fiber, but the manufacturers really know their business. Like, they understand what you would want. And we haven't, that isn't at market, so I don't know, we haven't done any tests over time, like over 5 years, what that looks like.
But relative to the bed and bath industry, so this would be good for a mattress pad fill.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
But yeah, any were flat fiber, so blending with a conjugated fiber, like a recycled poly that has conjugate to it, is where you're gonna get the resilience. It's not gonna come from our fiber. We're gonna bring comfort, and the poly or wool is another alternative for giving you the longevity.
But we could do that.
And football, bill,
Yeah, I forgot about that.
inside, cross pillows, etc. So a lot of different interior solutions as well.
Yes, Susan.
I have several questions, but I'll ask this one. What percentage now did you say Refibra is of recycled
Content,
content?
30%,
That's what I
but
thought.
we're aiming to be at 50% by 2030. Yeah, and a lot of the challenge there,
So would it be possible to get to 100%? Do you have that on your timeline?
we don't have it on our timeline, and honestly, it's more, I bet you we could, like, what we could actually process, of course, but it's more about the waste supply chain. What,
That infrastructure.
the infrastructure is not there. I think the last time we were here at High Point Market, there's someone in North Carolina who's actually shredding old upholstery, taking out the poly, taking out the cotton, taking out the viscose, and separating it and making new yarns. It's super cool. It's a 70-mile radius. That's all that they can service. And where we're getting our recycled cotton is from Europe, because they have the industry there to separate and then, to get the pulp out of it. That's what's going on. So it's honestly, to me, it's like a legislative issue. Yeah.
It is.
Can I ask a question
Yes.
going back to lyocell?
Yes.
Is the difference between Monal and lyocell the cotton rayon blend? I know we talked about there was a number of things, but for instance, does Monal not have cotton content and just the lyocell does?
Okay, none of the lyocell has cotton content. It's just the Refibra, where we're using, like recycled cotton input. But lyocell and Modal, it's just wood, and it's a blend of hardwoods. Some people like to say, oh, it's only this type of wood. We don't say that because we know it's a blend. Lyocell is primarily from eucalyptus, but you can't brand with that. Don't even think about it. We get in trouble. And then the Modal is primarily beech.
It's primarily.
Beech wood.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to add to that, the Model falls into the viscose process, that's really your definer between the two sustainability messages. Lyocell is your cleaner, recaptured water, recaptured solvents, whereas the viscose process uses a little bit harsher. Even though we are, highly rated on our chemical management and all those aspects, it's still a more caustic process. The whole viscose family.
Yes.
My question is about wood too. I noticed that your newest plants are in Thailand and in Brazil, two places where we have bad problems with deforestation. I know y'all are committed to avoiding deforestation, and I'm curious, what initiatives do you have in those countries specifically?
So we actually have a joint venture in Brazil, and so it is an FSC managed forest that we're working from. We are the country of Germany away from any endangered forests in Brazil. So that is where we are getting, we have more control though after the pulp input that we can get out of there. So we're not having to source all the way around because it's a joint venture. And why it's cool is that they're using the middle of the wood to make 2x4s for furniture and for flooring. Everything that's around the wood is what we're chipping and using for our pulp. So that's Brazil. And then Thailand, again, it's only a lyocell plant, so it doesn't, it's closed loop. And I don't know anything about the forest. I don't think we're getting any wood from there. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I knew you had a good answer.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
What percentage is
It's, the pile is 50% TENCEL Lyocell, 50% cotton in the pile.
And you can keep that. Anybody, I'm just curious, where are you guys coming from?
We're from Raleigh, North Carolina, so we're here as a member. We're probably incorporated.
Oh, very cool, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
we're one of the member sponsors here.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, and how about you?
I work with Josh.
Okay, wonderful, okay, very cool. How about you?
I'm here with for fabric.
Nice. Okay, and I think we're gonna have a meeting after this, because you have TENCEL model backing. Okay, very cool.
And I'm the designer, and I would like to know if you want me, although I'm interrupting your flow.
No, no, no.
What was your YouTube channel? Because it was
Home lens
oh,
and one
lens.
word.
Okay. And how do I know what fabrics actually are?
So they have to be certified. Not everybody brands because they don't want to, because some people are like, our brand is bigger. Like Nike can tell us, it may not make sense for Nike to use TENCEL. Exactly, but they are working with us, like Adidas works with us. Allbirds loves to promote us because it is a part of their whole ethos of their sustainability messaging. So sometimes it's hard to know, but really why we've been coming to these markets is to let people know it's an option. And you can ask, you know, on the back it will say usually TENCEL Lyocell if you look at the ingredients of the fabric. Yeah. If it just says Lyocell, you can even ask, like, is this actually TENCEL?
There are some good sites that do a really good job in messaging, like West Elm and Pottery Barn do a great job on messaging. They're vetting a lot between their organic focus, their TENCEL Lyocell focus, and their linen focus. Same with Buffy is another direct consumer that has done a great job in using TENCEL Lyocell across pretty much most of their offering between comforter, sheets, and now pillows and soon these other categories.
So where can we get like a list of these final retailers that are actually deals, like for us?
Yes.
That we don't manufacture furniture.
Yeah.
We know that our fabrics are going to the West Elm, Pottery Barn.
So we can definitely send you that.
Piggyback off of what they're already understanding.
We have two things. We have, like, internally, we do what's called like a placement deck, PowerPoint, where our team goes through websites and we collect images and links so that you could buy it if you wanted it. And we can send you that so you can see where it's at Market for Home specifically. We also have a where to buy page, which is on our tencel.com page. And that is where you can, I think Buffy's on there.
Yeah,
Maloof.
so, just to add to it, it's not necessarily comprehensive because it's going to be everywhere. We highlight some of the key ones, like West Elm on it, and then some European, Sheridan of Australia. So it's a variety. If you have something in mind, you can check in our system, let you know whether they're branding with us and for what we know about it.
All right, well.
And we do have a lot of fabric samples over here. There's carpets, rugs, and different velvets and different textures. So come on over, touch and feel.
Okay, I don't think we have any questions, so I'm going to close out of this and we'll keep talking here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.